Welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be looking at something pretty wild. We're going to be diving into the world of how to create dynamic 4D models from a single video.
Ooh, that's
Okay.
ambitious.
It is. But the results, I think you'll agree, are really quite stunning. So, think about taking a regular video that you might shoot on your phone
Right.
and through some very clever processing, being able to pull out a full detailed 3D model that also captures how everything is moving over time. And this is all done using some really cutting edge AI. And get this, it doesn't need any extra training to be able to do this.
So it's sort of like general purpose in a way.
Yeah, it can kind of just figure this out. So, for today's deep dive, we're going to be looking at a paper that was published just recently called Uni4D.
Okay.
And, this paper, I think, does a really great job of highlighting, kind of where the state of the art is with AI. And they point out that, we've gotten incredibly good at these 2D tasks,
Right.
like, being able to recognize what objects are in an image, estimating the depth from a single still photograph, these kinds of things. But when you start to try and extend that to this very, very complex world of 4D,
Right.
it's proven to be a real challenge.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest hurdles has been the difficulty of getting good real-world 4D data.
Right.
Yeah.
To actually train something on that kind of information.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you also have this challenge of being able to combine all the different visual signals you get from a video in an intelligent way.
Right, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where I think Uni4D really shines in terms of the approach that it's taken. It takes these really powerful foundation models, the ones that we've talked about a lot, that have been trained on these huge, vast data sets, and it combines those with traditional structure for motion techniques.
Oh, okay. So it's like a best of both worlds approach.
Exactly. It's this really compelling kind of marriage of AI's pattern recognition ability with these long-standing, well-established geometric principles.
Right.
And then the aim here is to create a 4D representation of the scene that lines up with all the visual clues that it can pull out of the video, in a way that actually makes physical sense. Right.
That's smart.
Things like respecting how we know that objects move in the real world, how cameras move in the real world. So they frame this whole thing as what they call an energy minimization problem.
Okay.
And what they mean by that is that the system is constantly searching for the best possible 4D model that would explain the video that they're feeding in.
I see.
And that includes things like figuring out where is the camera at every point in time, what does the static background, the 3D structure of that look like, and how are all the moving objects? Where are they in 3D space and how are they moving over time? So there's a lot going on in this system. So let's start to unpack it a little bit. The first step is really about extracting these visual cues from the video, right? You need to be able to feed this information into the system.
Right.
So how do they go about extracting that information?
Right. So the first thing it does is it leverages several pre-trained visual foundation models to really kind of go through that input video.
Okay.
And these models, because they've already been kind of shown a ton of different visual information, they can pull out some really important pieces from this video.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got this prior knowledge, this experience built in.
Exactly.
So they don't have to relearn everything from scratch.
Right, exactly. So the first thing they want to do is this thing called dynamic segmentation.
Dynamic segmentation, what is that?
Yeah. So the goal there is to identify and track any moving objects that are in the video.
Okay.
And for this, Uni4D uses a clever combination of a few different models.
Okay.
So it starts with RAM, which is short for Region-Based Activation Map, which is essentially a way for the AI to recognize different categories of objects that are in the scene.
Got it.
So it's like, okay, that's a person, that's a car, that's a tree.
Okay.
And then they use GPT-4o
Yes.
to filter out elements that are likely to be static.
Oh, okay, so things that aren't moving.
Right, exactly, like buildings or trees.
Right.
And then the reason they do this is so they can focus on what is moving, the dynamic elements.
Okay.
So they can isolate those.
Gotcha.
So then to kind of initially identify the objects, they use grounding SAM, which gives them segmentation masks for these objects in keyframes.
Segmentation mask, okay.
Yeah, so think of it like a precise outline of the object.
Okay.
Like if you were to color in a picture, this would be like the lines you draw before you color.
Right.
And finally, they use DVIA, which takes over to track those segmented objects consistently across all the frames.
Ah, okay.
So from there, they have a sequence of these masks that highlights those moving objects in each frame.
So they've basically now got a way of saying, okay, here's everything in the video that's moving.
Exactly.
Okay. So then the next thing they do is this dense motion tracking. Now, how does that differ from just knowing what's moving, right? They need more than just to know that this object is moving and this object is not.
Right. So this is where they leverage some recent advancements in the field, rather than using what we might call traditional optical flow techniques,
Okay.
where you look at how each pixel is moving between consecutive frames. Uni4D uses something called dense pixel tracklets.
Dense pixel tracklets.
Yeah, from CoTracker V3, which is another model.
Okay.
And this one is particularly good at dealing with things like occlusions, so when objects briefly disappear behind other objects,
Okay.
or when the viewpoint of the camera changes a lot.
Yeah.
So what this does is essentially it tracks a very dense grid of 2D points over time,
Okay.
giving us very detailed trajectories of how these points are moving. And they do this bidirectionally every 10 frames to get a really comprehensive understanding of this motion.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And then these tracklets are filtered using the dynamic segmentation mask that we talked about earlier.
Oh, I see.
So you can tell which ones are actually moving and which ones are the static background just appearing to move because the camera is moving.
Right.
So you're not just knowing what's moving, but you have a record of how every single point is moving.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, so now they've got what's moving and they've got all of that motion information. Then the third visual cue they extract is this video depth estimation. Now, what does that give them?
Right. So video depth estimation is where you're estimating the distance of each pixel from the camera for every frame.
Okay.
And this provides some crucial initial geometric information.
Okay.
For this, Uni4D uses Unidepth V2,
Unidepth V2. Okay.
which is a monocular depth estimation network. And that takes each individual frame and produces an initial depth map, which is kind of like a grayscale image,
Yeah.
where the intensity represents the distance from the camera.
Okay, got it.
And this model also provides an initial estimate of the camera's internal parameters, like its focal length, which is crucial for understanding the 3D geometry.
Okay, that makes sense. So now they've gathered all these visual cues. So they've got the dynamic segmentation, the dense motion tracking, and the video depth estimation. So what's the next step? They need to take all this information and somehow build this 4D model, and this is where the this energy minimization framework comes into play, right?
Exactly. So
Okay.
with all these cues in hand, Uni4D formulates what they call an energy function.
Energy function.
And this is basically a way to measure how well a proposed 4D scene model aligns with all the visual cues that we talked about,
Okay.
and how much it respects kind of our understanding of physics
Okay.
and real-world behavior.
Got it.
So this function is made up of several different terms,
Okay.
each focusing on a particular aspect.
Okay, so let's break those down one by one. The first one they talk about is the static bundle adjustment. Now, what is that all about?
Right, so static bundle adjustment focuses on the parts of the scene that are not moving.
Right. Okay.
And it measures how consistent the reconstructed 3D structure of these static elements is with the observed 2D pixel correspondences, those tracklets of static points that we talked about earlier.
Right. Okay.
So essentially, it's looking at if we were to project those 3D points back into the 2D image,
Right.
how far off are they from where they actually were in the video?
Okay.
So by minimizing that distance, you're refining that 3D geometry of the static background,
Gotcha.
but also the camera positions
Okay.
over time.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the next term is this non-rigid bundle adjustment. Now that one has to do with the moving objects, right?
Exactly. So this accounts for the objects that are moving,
Okay.
and it measures the discrepancy between the reconstructed 3D motion of points on the dynamic objects
Mm-hmm.
and their corresponding pixel tracklets. So essentially, it's trying to make the 3D motion match the 2D motion as best as possible.
Okay. And since this is a video, we need to make sure the camera motion makes sense too, right?
Exactly. So we have a camera motion prior, which enforces a temporal smoothness on the camera motion.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically saying we don't want any jerky, unrealistic motion between frames.
Right. We want this to look like a real camera movement.
Right. Smooth.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and finally, there's the dynamic motion prior, which makes sure that the moving objects themselves move realistically.
Oh, okay. That's important.
Yeah, very important. And this has a couple of key components. First, we have the as rigid as possible prior.
As rigid as possible. Okay.
Yeah, or ARAP prior.
Okay.
And this penalizes extreme non-rigid deformation of the dynamic objects.
Okay. Okay.
So we want to maintain that local rigidity,
Yeah.
and prevent them from becoming too deformed.
Right. Like Jello or something.
Right, exactly. And the second part is a smoothness term, which promotes temporal smoothness in the 3D motion. So again, avoiding those jerky or erratic movements.
Right. Right. So they've got all these terms in this energy function. Now, trying to minimize this whole function with all these variables sounds pretty complicated, right?
Yeah, so with potentially millions of variables to optimize,
Right.
doing it all at once would be incredibly challenging.
Right.
So Uni4D has this clever three-stage optimization pipeline
3-year stage. Okay.
to divide and conquer.
Okay, so let's break down these 3 stages. The first one is camera initialization. What happens there?
So the first stage is all about getting a good initial guess for the camera parameters.
Okay.
So that's both its pose, position, and orientation, and its intrinsic characteristics.
Right.
And they use the video depth and the dense pixel motion to establish those initial correspondences between 2D points in the video and where they would be in 3D space.
Okay.
And then they minimize an energy function that really focuses on those camera parameters.
Got it.
So they're essentially figuring out where the camera's moving and how it's working. And then they use that to project the depth predictions into a common 3D coordinate system.
So that's kind of like setting the stage for the rest of the optimization.
Exactly, getting that initial foundation.
Got it. Got it. So then stage 2, what's happening in stage 2?
Stage 2 is focused on bundle adjustment.
Bundle adjustment. Okay.
And here, we jointly refine the camera pose and the 3D geometry of the static parts of the scene.
Right.
So we're minimizing that static bundle adjustment energy that we talked about.
Right.
And the camera motion prior.
Gotcha.
And by enforcing the consistency between the static 3D points and their 2D projections,
Right.
we're improving the accuracy of the static geometry and the camera trajectory.
Okay.
And then after this stage, they also filter out any noisy 3D points.
Okay. So kind of cleaning up the
Yeah.
background.
Exactly, refining those stable elements.
Right, right. And then finally, stage 3, they get to those dynamic objects, right?
Precisely.
Oh.
So now that we have the camera parameters pretty much fixed, the final stage is all about refining the dynamic structure.
Right.
And we do this by minimizing the non-rigid bundle adjustment term
Okay.
and the dynamic motion prior.
Gotcha.
So this is optimizing the 3D motion of the dynamic objects to fit those 2D tracks,
Okay.
while still encouraging smooth and physically plausible motion.
Got it. Got it. So after all of this, after these 3 stages, they now have all this information. They have the camera motion, they have the static scene, they have how all the objects are moving. So how do they bring that all together into that final 4D model?
Right, so to get this nice unified 4D representation, they use the improved camera parameters and those masks for the static parts to project the aligned depth maps into world coordinates.
Okay.
And to deal with noise at the boundaries of the depth maps, they use an edge mask filter.
Okay.
And finally, to get that nice dense depth map,
Okay.
they apply a scale interpolation in 3D, which considers the nearest dynamic point trajectories.
Okay.
And that gives us this final high-quality 4D reconstruction.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So they evaluated this on some data sets, right? How well does it actually work?
Yeah, they did extensive evaluations on several well-known and pretty challenging data sets, like Centel, Davis, TM Dynamic, and Bond.
Okay. And what were the results?
The results consistently show that Uni4D performs really well, often achieving competitive or even better results
Wow.
in terms of both camera pose estimation accuracy
Okay.
and the quality of the video depth estimation
Okay. Compared to other
compared to state-of-the-art methods,
Okay. Okay.
especially the ones designed for dynamic scenes,
Oh, okay.
which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that sounds very impressive. And how about the actual 4D models that are produced? What do they look like?
Right, so
Sure.
qualitatively the results are quite impressive. Uni4D generates very clean dynamic segmentations
Okay.
and realistic 4D geometry. Other methods often struggle with things like distorted geometry,
Right.
artifacts trailing behind moving objects,
Right.
noisy segmentation masks,
Right. Yeah.
all of which Uni4D handles much better.
Yeah. That's great.
And they also did some ablation studies,
Relation studies.
which are essentially where you remove different parts of the method
Oh. Okay.
to assess their individual contributions.
Right. Right.
And these confirm that each stage of the optimization pipeline and the dynamic regularization terms are super important.
Okay. Okay.
And they also found that the framework is pretty flexible in terms of which depth estimation model you use.
Oh, okay. So you can kind of swap those out.
Yeah.
That's good to know. And what about runtime? How long does this whole process take?
So the runtime analysis shows that the pre-processing step using those foundation models takes a large chunk of the time,
Okay.
which makes sense because they're complex.
Right, right.
But the actual optimization process scales pretty well with the length of the video.
Okay.
So they reported that for a video of about 50 frames,
Okay.
it takes about 5 minutes on a high-end GPU.
Okay. Okay. That's not too bad. So, to bring this back to our listener, what are some of the key takeaways from this deep dive into Uni4D?
Well, I think Uni4D is a really big step forward in our ability to use these AI models to understand dynamic 3D scenes from just a video.
Right. Right.
And the fact that it doesn't require any task-specific retraining or fine-tuning
Right.
really highlights how well these models can generalize to new tasks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. And that three-stage optimization pipeline
Yes.
is really clever
It's very clear.
in terms of breaking down this problem
Yes.
into these manageable chunks so you
Yes.
can progressively refine the model.
Exactly.
Yeah. And while that pre-processing does take time, I think the quality of the 4D reconstructions really shows the potential here,
Yeah.
to create these really detailed 3D representations.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see where this kind of technology could lead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, imagine the possibilities in, video editing, special effects, virtual reality,
Robotic?
robotics, yeah. Anything where you need to understand how a scene is laid out
Yeah.
and how things are moving in it.
And how things change over time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So definitely encourage you to check out the paper if you're interested in learning more.
It's definitely worth a read.
Yeah, they've got some great visualizations in there as well. And think about it. What could this kind of technology enable in your world? What are some of the applications that you see for this? So something to ponder until our next exploration into the world of neural intelligence.